Before I get into the video, I want to say that at the time of writing, the creator of YuGiOh, Kazuki Takahashi, tragically passed away while attempting to save a child from drowning towards the end of 2022. I have this man to thank for making such a wonderful IP that has been a huge part of my life, and I hope that he is resting in peace, and my condolences go out to Takahashi's family and friends. This is quite a video to do at the beginning of this channel's life, isn't it? I mean, it's YuGiOh, one of the three big major card games that have been around for decades. An absolutely massive franchise with years and years of competitive history, controversy, television shows, manga, spin-offs, video games, merchandise, you get the idea. So this video is not really going to be an in-depth look at the physical card game or its history. I'll talk about some of it, of course, but this video is more about my personal history with YuGiOh, how I got into it, what I like about it, things like that. A personal look back, and one you guys might be able to relate to on some level, or maybe if you've never given the game a try, or the franchise a look even, I might convince you to give it a shot. Anyway, that's enough introductions. This is my personal retrospective of the famous Japanese card game, YuGiOh.
Do you wander through this life like a child without a care?
YuGiOh, roughly translated as King of Games, was a manga series written and illustrated by Kazuki Takahashi. The first chapter hit Japan in 1996, published by Shonen Jump. The manga may actually catch a lot of YuGiOh veterans off guard, as it is a much darker and very different story compared to the hit anime of the same name. The manga stars Yugi Moto, who after solving the Millennium Puzzle, awakens to an evil alter ego referred to as Yami, or Dark Yugi. He challenges bullies and criminals to Saw-like games, resulting in them being punished via torture or death. Yeah, it's pretty insane. The manga also did not solely focus on the card game that we're all familiar with. Again, YuGiOh means King of Games, with an S, plural. So naturally, the characters played all kinds of games, from classic ones to made-up ones. However, when the card game Magic and Wizards, which would later be rebranded as Duel Monsters, a way cooler name in my opinion, debuted, the focus of the manga greatly shifted due to fan feedback and Shonen Jump smelling a cash cow on the horizon. Thus, the rest is history. The card game took over the manga, a hit anime would premiere in Japan and the West, which was dubbed by 4Kids, God rest their souls, and of course, Duel Monsters would reach real-world store shelves not long after with its first booster set, Legend of the Blue Eyes White Dragon. My first exposure to YuGiOh was back when I was about 5 or 6 years old. My older brothers were the ones who were initially in on the hot new anime stuff happening in the early 2000s. Beyblade, Naruto, Dragon Ball Z, and of course YuGiOh. They watched the show on Saturday mornings in the living room and eventually got their hands on the physical cards and a couple of the video games. Since I was so young, and most of you probably know how older siblings can be, I wasn't able to play the game until much later. Once I was 10 years old and in 5th grade, I had the responsibility and comprehension to own the cards and play the game. I joined my brothers around the kitchen table with the hand-me-down cards I was given, and I would eventually introduce the game to my friends in elementary school. The deck I had was a hot mess. It was filled with really old cards with no synergy or strategy, although I did favor flip monsters and trap cards. When I did go on the offensive, I had a few 1800 attack point beat sticks and my boss monster, Ultimate Tyranno. My older brothers had fire and water themed structure decks that they customized to fit their styles. The fire deck was focused on Fire Kings and the water deck was focused on Ocean Dragon Lord Neo Daedalus. Oh, and I should probably explain the basics of the game. I'm going to stick with the bare basics as YuGiOh can be a confusing wreck of rules. To play, you will need a deck consisting of 40 to 60 cards. Your deck will be composed of monsters, spells, and traps. The ultimate goal is to reduce your opponent's life points from 8,000 to 0. Monster cards are the primary way of completing this objective as they have attack and defense points used for battling. Some monsters have special abilities that help you in many ways. Spell cards are the bread and butter of YuGiOh. They are cards that you use from your hand instantly to gain an advantage, such as destroying cards or bringing cards back from the graveyard, where destroyed and used cards go. Lastly, you have trap cards. These are slow as you must place them face down for a turn in order to use them later. But when they are sprung, they can have devastating effects on the game. The best part is you can use them on your opponent's turn to screw them over. There are tons of different types of each of these cards, but again, I'm going to stick with the bare basics for this video. There are a few other ways to win duels, however, one of which most of you are already familiar with, the legendary Exodia. Other monsters like Exodia exist that automatically let you win the duel if you can pull off their conditions. The other way to win a duel is to deck out your opponent, otherwise known as your opponent runs out of cards. And that's the most simplified and basic explanation of this convoluted card game that I can possibly give. One common complaint with Yu-Gi-Oh! Is that the game is overly complicated and the cards have novels of effects that can be hard to understand. I agree with this. Look how tiny the font is, and how much these cards can do, it's insane. There are lots of different subgenres of cards that do all sorts of different things, and also the tiniest differences in terminology can completely change how a card works. If you want a breakdown of what I mean, I recommend checking out the Jay Witz's video on Yu-Gi-Oh! Card text. My number one issue with Yu-Gi-Oh! Is the crazy meta the game has developed. This is another common gripe you might have heard before. Your opponent takes the first move, spends like 30 minutes to an hour setting up an unbeatable barrage of monsters who can shut you down anytime you do something, and when it's finally your turn, you might as well throw in the towel. The only way to stop this is to use what the community calls hand traps to stop their insane combos. Not all competitive duels go like this, but it is more common than most people would like. This is why I'm a casual Yu-Gi-Oh! Player. I have good modern decks, but I just really don't like this type of gameplay. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is at its most fun when both players can make a crazy move that turns the game around in a moment's notice. Not just one player sucking the fun away from turn 1. This isn't even including one-turn kill strategies, or OTKs for short. This type of play is when your opponent kills you before you even get a turn at all. I think most Yu-Gi-Oh! Players complain about the meta and how it killed the game for them, but there is some truth to it. I lost faith in the card game around the time Pendulum Monsters dropped. It wasn't until the mobile game Duel Links and the movie Dark Side of Dimensions came out that I finally gave Yu-Gi-Oh! Another chance. While those are my issues with Yu-Gi-Oh!, I love pretty much everything else about the game. It's fast-paced, fun, open-ended, and the basic rules aren't too hard to learn. I taught my girlfriend and her little brother how to play fairly quickly and they both had fun. Unlike Magic or Pokemon, there isn't a resource such as energy or land to manage. If you meet the conditions on a card, you just play it. This is what I enjoy most about the game, as I don't feel restricted or have to play a long waiting game just to do simple actions. The variety in card art and themes is also super cool. You have the classics like Dark Magician or Blue Eyes, but there are also thousands of other cards with their own tricks and strategies. You can make a deck almost around anything, and it'll work. Yu-Gi-Oh! Also doesn't have any set rotations. The oldest of cards can be used with the new stuff no problem. There is a ban list, of course. Some cards are just way too strong to have around, but you can still use some ancient cards, and some of those old cards are still incredibly good to this day, like Raigeki or Monster Reborn. Since I'm not a competitive player, entering local tournaments just isn't my style, so I only get to play with my buddies when they come over for a visit. But there are a few digital means of playing Yu-Gi-Oh!, and by a few I mean several. There are video game adaptations of the card game that reflect events from the anime and also provide duel simulators against AI opponents, or sometimes they even let you play online against other people across the world. From the Game Boy to modern consoles and PC, you can partake in some duel monsters whenever you want. If you're looking to get into Yu-Gi-Oh!, this is how I recommend it. It's free, and in a few cases, it's a good way to learn how the game works since it's all automated. My top pick is the mobile game I discussed before, Duel Links. This is a simplified version of Yu-Gi-Oh! For smartphones, and it's also on Steam. It uses 3x3 fields rather than the traditional 5x5, and there are also characters in the anime to unlock and use, each of them having their own unique skills. The card pool is also more limited than the real card game, so the meta isn't as tough to get into. If you're a new or returning player, this is a great place to start. If you want to play some big boy Yu-Gi-Oh! Though, we have two official modern options for you. Master Duel is the newest and most competitive option. It features almost every card released and has some slick presentation. The game is entirely online ranked duels, with not much PvE or solo content compared to Duel Links, but if you want the full experience, this is what you should be playing. Legacy of the Duelist is getting old, but it is still a good duel simulator with almost every card released through 2019. It's a little slow, but it has tons of content with anime retellings from all the major shows, a draft mode, online duels, and offline challenges. If you want a safe place to practice the main Yu-Gi-Oh format, this is a good option. It and Master Duel are available on all modern platforms, including Switch and PC. This last option is unofficial, but if you want to play Yu-Gi-Oh on PC with all the cards unlocked from the start, I recommend YuGiOh Omega. It's a stylish duel simulator made solely for online play. My friends and I use this app a lot because it's quick pick up and play nature. It features almost every Yu-Gi-Oh format you could dream of, and it's also available on Android. And there you have it. This won't be the last time I cover Yu-Gi-Oh on the channel. I have tons of things to discuss, like the other video games, the spin-offs, the anime, the manga, and I've also considered streaming Duel Links and Master Duel. I actually bought my webcam that I use for streaming Yu-Gi-Oh! I think that shows my dedication and willingness to talk about this game, but for now, this will end the little tangent about this amazing and sometimes chaotic card game. I'll see you all next time.